Now, that's not all that has been surprising in the manuscripts. When we encounter printed music, a lot of times we have something called a staccato, which can be either a little dot, so it's like a round little dot, or sometimes it looks kind of like a triangle, and we call it a wedge. Well, we know from letters that Beethoven got very mad when people would not notice the difference between a dot and a line staccato, or this longer form of staccato. And that's for a long time made us aware that, oh, he must have had two things in mind, this dot and then this one longer thing. What has become more clear, again, spending many hours rehearsing from the manuscripts and continuing to study and encounter piece after piece after piece, is I think that Beethoven, in fact, had 4 levels of staccato. There was a dot, where it's just a very small, round mark. Then there's a short line staccato, which is extremely close to the dot, but it does have a little length to it. Then there's a medium line staccato, where it's a bit longer. And then there's a longer one, where it really has a noticeable length. Now, this happens to be in one piece of music. This is 3 bars of Opus 59, number 1, where the energy diminishes as we play. Maybe I'll just play it for you so you get a sense of it. So what's happening is the different staccatos are telling us a different energy level that brings the music down in energy. Now, it would be very easy to look at something like this and think, oh, that's just an accident of the way the pen fell. But as you look at more of them, you realize they also tend to be consistent within their grouping. And in fact, this is a marking which combines the dot with a slur. So there's a slur, but we connect it with our bow. So it has a little attack, but the slur brings those attacks together. And Beethoven, when he marks portato, which is very often, is extremely careful that these are always nice, beautifully formed little dots. And there you see it, there you see it. It's extremely careful. So why should we then assume that these are going to be very careless and that their length doesn't have any meaning? Well, we could have a lot of different thoughts about that, but I did find one example that pointed yet a new direction. This is Beethoven's 3rd piano sonata, so Opus 2, number 3. And in it, the piano builds up to a very loud dynamic and arrives on these chords. And there are 8 chords printed here, and this is copperplate engraving from the first edition, the Artaria edition. And there are 8 notes with a quite long staccato, this long version here. Now, then there are 4 notes very scrupulously printed with a medium staccato. Then there are 4 notes with a small line staccato. And indeed, it goes on, and here we have a nicely formed dot in the bass. Now, you can't print that by accident. And I have to infer from this a story where early on, Beethoven was determined that he would try to get these distinctions printed. And I do think it's reasonable to assume that the printers found this an unreasonable request, and that he did, in fact, give up on it. Well, just to explain a little bit that often this kind of dot, the smallest dot, will very often be short, so we really will perceive it as very short, delicate notes. This is a passage from Leopold Mozart, the father of Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. Now, if you notice, there's a great big slur here. And on that slur, there are 9 line staccatos. Now, if the line staccato was referring to a short note and particularly telling you that it was meant to be short, well, this marking would make absolutely no sense at all. However, if the longer line staccato is a kind of accent, that makes a lot of sense. So in this case, Leopold Mozart means little bits of energy. And so when we bring that over to a detached texture, it is going to be a very short note, but it's going to have a whole different level of energy. And in fact, that works very beautifully when we observe in the manuscripts. It can be loud and it can be soft, but what Beethoven is telling us is that that marking has a voltage, it has a kind of high intensity, and that the longer that staccato is, the more intensity there is to that attack.